I've been asked to play some elevator music, so I'm going to give it a shot. Raise your hand if you don't like it. Is anyone else dancing or is it just me? Okay, I think we can get going. I'll just pause that. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to bring up the people who are speaking just now to the stage to ask them questions before we get started. How do I do that? Let me see. That's not it. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, and just a quick question before we get started. Were you planning to screen share or anything like that?
No, I was not.
Okay, cool. I'm also not planning to screen share, so Shane, I think we'll stick with stages for now, and then when it's your turn to present, we can all move over to the cafe channel. the raise hands function is quite nice. So anyway, let's get started. So we've got a few things on the agenda for the call. In order, we will be discussing, firstly, the Chain Halt postmortem. We published a blog post last week outlining all of the details, but we felt we should also just chat about it as well, give people an opportunity to ask questions, and just have a discussion. Once we've finished chatting about that, we'll move on to discussing the 0.6.3 upgrade, which is scheduled, assuming that the DAO vote passes, for next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Following that, we'll discuss PIP 6.2, Settlers of New Chains, which is our proposed strategy for whitelisting new chains for block rewards. I'll provide the details on that and give everyone an opportunity to ask more questions about that. And then we'll turn it over to Shane to provide some updates on NodePilot. Before we get started, I just want to draw your attention to a few things. The first is that we are using a service called Slido. I'll just post a link to it in the community calls channel. Using this, you can submit anonymous questions. You can add your name if you want to, but that's only optional. If you want to ask a question anonymously, you can use this. And I'll be keeping an eye on those questions to bring them to the speaker's attention. You can also like questions. So if you don't have a specific question you want to ask, but you want to promote other people's questions, you can do that. We also have a poll on Slido as well, just an informal poll to get an idea of which change you're all most excited about whitelisting. This won't actually affect anything because these are the majority of these are planned to be whitelisted as part of Settlers of New Chains on July 5th, which is 2 Mondays from now. Yes, Shane, this is being recorded by Alberto. Ask questions via Slido. Also, you can raise your hand in the stage if you want to ask a question directly, or just share some thoughts that require a bit more speaking. The other thing to draw your attention to is we have, how did I get it in here? We're doing NFTs for this community call. So if you tag, I'm going to need to get their permissions in. We have a bot that you can send a message to, a secret code that we have specified, and you will receive a nice NFT for attending the call. You'll receive this. Oh, crap. You'll receive this NFT. I'm going to send a picture to. Actually, no, I'll not. I'll make it exclusive. But let me just. Here we go. So this bot, I just sent a mention in the community call channel. Just click that, and then message PulpBot with the following code: Settlers, SETTLERS, and you will receive an NFT for attending this call. And there is a maximum supply of 50, so get in there fast. But yeah, now that that's over with, I think we can get started on the first topic, which is the Chain Halt postmortem. I'll bring up Andrew to just give us an overview. I'm thinking for each topic, the way we'll work it is the speaker will provide an overview, and during that, listeners can submit anonymous questions or raise their hand, and then we'll just do Q&A. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, great. Okay, looks like the plot bot isn't working. Wonderful. Okay, let's. I'll fix that up offline, but let's get started. Yeah. Want to take it away, Andrew?
Sure. Thanks, Jack. So first topic is May 28th, Chain Halt. I'm going to do my best to answer all questions in my overview that I could possibly think of, but I'm sure there's going to be some stuff I left out. I'm pretty much doing a stream of consciousness, just going to kind of just do what I remember from May 28th and explain the Chain Halt in full depth and full transparency. With that being said, feel free to ask the questions anonymously or wait till the Q&A section at the end. So May 28th was probably the most difficult chain halt we've ever endured in this network's history. It was a product of a few things that happened, but in order to really understand why specifically this was so difficult for the for Pocket Network to overcome as a whole, you have to understand two parts. There was the first part, which was the bug that caused the chain halt, which I'll go over in detail in just a second. And the second was the coordination effort that is kind of a feature bug of Tendermint and the way that they handle the fault tolerant issues that may or may not come up. Most of you guys already know this, but Tendermint is a immediate consistent blockchain, meaning not like Bitcoin and Ethereum. We require immediate consistency every block. So if there isn't a specific block or a specific majority agreement, 2/3 majority agreement on what the state's supposed to be, we come to a halt. We stop and we just hang out there until we can have some sort of resolution. Sometimes that resolution is automatic. Like if for whatever reason the proposer was offline, the blockchain will resolve automatically. But most of the time it's manual, right? So May 28th, I believe, is a Friday. We discovered an issue, and by we I mean some people in some more appropriate time zones discovered an issue where the chain was halted at basically 3 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we immediately started looking into the possible causes. And if you'll believe it, even though it was a 3 or 4 day recovery, we managed to figure out what it was within the first hour. And unfortunately, it was human error. It was a difference in state in the transaction indexer, which came out in 6.2 versus 6.1, meaning that 6.2 was supposed to be a minor release, a minor version, no consensus changes at all. But the way that we handled the transaction indexing in 6.2 actually changed the rules, the consensus rules, slightly when a specific combination of transactions happened. For those who are not familiar with transaction indexing, it's simple. Transactions are sent, gossiped around the network through the peer-to-peer layer. Each node will take it and store it in a mempool. And then if they propose a block, they'll read from the mempool, and those transactions will be stored in this database called the transaction indexer. If you are the recipient of the proposal block, you'll do the same thing. You'll read the transactions, replay them against the state, store them in your database. So since we're just storing transactions read-only, how could that possibly cause a chain halt? Well, the transaction indexer is actually used in one part of the state, and that's for replay protection. In our transaction, and that directly affects the state in the form of transaction fees. Meaning that if you replay a transaction meaning like you put the same transaction twice for whatever reason, It could be an accident, could be a peer-to-peer issue, it could be an attacker. The transaction indexer will remove a fee for the first transaction, and for the second transaction, it will not remove a fee. It'll just say, "Hey, this is a replay. Don't store it." Although Tendermint's transaction indexer, their default one, does store it, and that was something that we didn't really know at the time. No matter if it was a replay or not, Tendermint's transaction indexer stores redundant transactions. That's how it was in 6.1. So in 6.2, when we came out with our own custom transaction indexer by which we believed the same rules were being applied to the indexer, meaning that we believed that Tendermint would not store duplicate replay transactions, we came out with our own. And unfortunately, that handling of replay transactions is the difference that caused the chain halt. Meaning that all nodes on 6.1 versus 6.3 handled a replay differently. And that handling of that replay caused an issue that is very niche. And the steps were as follows. An account sent a transaction with no funds or less than the funds they had. It came up insufficient funds, which means a fee is not subtracted from that account because there's no funds there. Tendermint stores any invalid transaction below code 10 in the auth module, which includes that and replay attacks. The new transaction indexer does not store unless a fee is removed to prevent a specific attack, like where you're just blasting invalid transactions and bloating the transaction indexer itself. Now, the issue here is that this specific combination of transactions happened where we had an insufficient fee transaction, then somehow that insufficient fee transaction got replayed when it had sufficient fees or sufficient balance in the account. Now, we're still not sure exactly how it got replayed, but we don't believe it was an attack because it was a very, very small amount. And it seemed to be when some nodes had just come up online for other reasons. But again, we can't be 100% sure on how specifically this happened. But when that happened, 6.1 said, "Oh, we've seen this transaction before. It's a replay. Remove it from the or store it store it in the transaction indexer." And 6.3 said, "We haven't seen the transaction before because it's an insufficient fee, and there's not a corresponding. This is not a corresponding replay transaction, and it affected the state." Which means that we were stuck in a forked situation where in 6.1 they handled that transaction one way and did not subtract the fee and stored it in the indexer. And in 6.3 we subtracted the fee and stored it in the indexer because it was a valid transaction at this time. Now, we believe the reason this happened is because it was a random collision of the entropy field inside the transaction itself, which is supposed to act like a nonce in Ethereum, if you're familiar with that. Essentially, it makes all transactions unique. But some node providers have automatic scripts that send unjailing transactions or send wallet test transactions and things like that automatically, where they might have accidentally had a collision in the entropy itself. That's not unexpected behavior. It's not the fault of the node runners. We should be able to handle that. But that's what happened. So we had this split state. We figured it out almost immediately that was the issue, considering that between 6.1 and 6.2, there was only pretty much the indexer implemented. And we had to make a choice or a recommendation to the network to say, okay, well, how can we come to a consensus again? We had a few options. Option one was to say, we could just say all 6.3ers roll back. Option two was all 6.1ers go to 6.3 and use the new indexing rules. And then another option would be release a 6.4, which would kind of make everyone upgrade. And the reason we would do something like that is just to ensure that, it's fair to everyone, which, the logic there isn't super solid, right? With that being said, we decided to make a recommendation to make the 6.1ers upgrade to 6.3. They could have gone to 6.2, of course, but 6.3 was also out. And it was the new upgrade standard, as Jack had mentioned earlier. So when we have this, so now what's in front of us? We're about, 5 or 6 hours into the chain halt at this point. We've figured out the bug. We've confirmed the bug. We've confirmed that moving to 6.3 would solve the issue. So now we have to coordinate and make sure we can get enough validator power onto 6.3. And luckily, we had a very good response from large node providers and even small node providers that were able to upgrade relatively quickly. Now, mind you, we have an extensive distributed community over multiple time zones. So there was an inherent delay, but I would be confident to say that within 24 to 48 hours, we had enough validator power on the correct version to move forward. Simple enough, but why was this a 3 or 4 day event then? Well, once we got there to 6.3, we saw that, the block's not moving forward. People, we're stuck on this very high voting round. And let me give a little bit of background about Tendermint voting rounds very quickly. For basically what happens is you have a proposer. He'll propose a block. If the block does not get 2/3 majority, it will time out, and then you'll go into the next round. Okay, and the next subsequent round will add a delta to that, meaning a little bit extra time to wait to come to the next consensus. So you can imagine it something like this in this example. Round 0 should happen every 15 minutes or so. Round 1 will be 15 and a half minutes. Round 2 would be 16 minutes, and so on and so forth. However, when we made it to, finally that 24 to 48 hour period where we had everyone on 6.3, we were on round 71. A round we have never actually achieved nor simulated in any of our quality assurance simulations. So we realized quickly that one of the main reason that we weren't able to produce a block was not only because of the delta times, which slowed down the block significantly, because you guys can do that math. It's not, and it's in the config JSON, by the way, it's not an insurmountable amount of time. It was an insurmountable amount of time where the nodes could be kept alive. And here's where, unfortunately, another pitfall of Tendermint came in. The nodes operate on this file called a write-ahead log, a wall file. That wall file is supposed to keep track of all of the current votes in the consensus round at the time, or in the consensus block at the time. So we were seeing, a couple gigabyte wall files and IO over our heads. Nodes were not being able to be kept alive. I mean, a lot of the node runners here already know that, simply just because of resource consumption and continuously writing and reading to this wall file. So we had to diagnose that probably, we actually had a lot of communication back and forth with large node providers, especially trying to figure out what was the rate that they could be kept alive? Could we get the biggest stakeholders, the people who are staked the most alive, for enough time? And we realized after another 12 to 24 hours that it was difficult enough for nodes after a restart to get to round 71. Most would die halfway through. And once you were on round 71, it was only a matter of time before you died. And since Tendermint's consensus operates in a partially synchronous environment, meaning that you have to be alive long enough in the round to cast the vote and to get others' votes and cast your vote based on what they voted. Meaning, like, I heard this from actor X and I heard this from actor Y, the fundamentals of Byzantine fault tolerance consensus algorithm. It meant, if this was a pretty much insurmountable task to keep the nodes alive synchronously long enough so that we could produce a block. So we kind of brought together some of the biggest stakeholders in the network, and we thought, maybe we could isolate the network in a way where we could delete the wall file and just do it on round 0 to try to expedite the consensus itself, meaning getting 66% of the power in a small closed off group, which ended up being, we got reasonable pushback. It wasn't feasible because there could be a leak somewhere, a peer-to-peer leak. If we got one vote from a different round, it could cause all these issues. So we went back to the drawing board, and this is probably three days in at this point of the Chain Halt event. And we realized that the most efficient way to likely do this, to surmount the round 71 resource consumption issue, was to simply code a patch that bypassed round 71, jumped directly to a higher round, so no external gossip about a lower round would cause issues, and then produce a block there. And then after the fact, the network would resolve itself once a block is produced, because everyone on a lower round, like stuck on 71, would read the incoming proposal block, see it from a higher height, clear out their wall file, and continue. So we made a coordinated patch, RC 0.6.3.1, that would on, oh gosh, I can't even remember the date now, at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on whatever day that ended up being, we would have enough, it would sleep until that moment, wake up the specific nodes, and those nodes would jump to round 100 all at the same time, ensuring synchronous environments, and come to consensus and produce the block. And that's, for those of you who weren't in the call, that's pretty much exactly what happened. And we were able to get past the chain halt at that height. So the following few days were rough for node runners, mainly because a lot of them, a lot of the nodes were working to clear the wall file. A lot of the nodes were having corruption issues just due to a matter of fact of just moving so much IO, or just doing so many in and out IO operations, and then having just a bunch of transactions that were living through 4 days worth of turmoil in the peer-to-peer gossip, which was of course a product of good decentralization, not able to even stop all those transactions from piling up. So, but after a few days, relatively speaking, the Chain Halt event was over, and we were able to proceed in a newfound stability with the majority of the nodes on 6.3, some on 6.2, a very small minority. From my view, that's the overview. Like, I believe I recalled all the events. I may have left out some details, but I can take questions at this time. Jack, I'm not sure if you want to hop back up and mediate, but I can look in the community calls channel and see if anything's coming through.
Hey everyone. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be any questions posted on Slido about this topic, or in the community calls channel. So if anyone wants to get in a question before we move on to the next topic, raise your hand or submit that question. I'll give it a little bit longer and then we can move on. I think most of the people on this call were involved in the resolution efforts, so I'm not surprised there's not too many questions about this. Yep. Okay. So yeah, the next item on the agenda was to discuss, looking forward, the next protocol upgrade. That is to say, all of the nodes have already updated to 0.6.3, but some of the features contained within the 0.6s are currently dormant because the consensus rule change hasn't been activated yet. So there's currently a proposal up to activate those rules next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll post a link to the proposal in the community calls channel just for your reference. But yeah, so next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, if this proposal passes, the Foundation will submit the Pocket Gov upgrade transaction to activate the consensus rules and activate features such as protobuf encoding, update stake, which will enable you all to top up your stake or change your chain IDs, making it very good timing for the Settlers of New Chains proposal. But yeah, Andrew, do you want to sort of give a quick recap of the sort of high-level features that 0.6 brings, and then I'll watch for questions about it while you do that.
Sure. So I'll try to not make it too redundant because I know in the last community call I went over some of the 6.x features. But since then, we have had some new features implemented for this rule change. I'll try to highlight just the consensus features to keep it brief. Meaning, like, you know, we have a few new queries and things like that, but that's not something that has to do with this consensus rule change. So in 6.0, in the last call, I highlighted, you know, multiple security patches for the Merkle sum index tree, for the previous block hash that's actually used to compute the sessions, and the security patch for proposer selection itself. I will briefly talk about those, but if you want to see more detail, you can just jump into the previous recorded call and listen to those specifically. You know, the Merkle sum index tree patch was a simple one. It was include the index in the Merkle sum tree or sum index tree, as we were just using the sum and omitting the index, which opened us up for a very specific type of leaf replay attack, which was, you know, it's kind of a far-fetched combination of leafs that you can do to make it work, but it could work, right? And that needs to be patched. For the block hash, essentially this was a patch for Tendermint's last block hash is actually Tendermint's block hash is actually the block hash -1 just by design of Tendermint. So we have to use the current block hash to make sure that there's no, that we maintain the unpredictable characteristic of our session generation, meaning that you shouldn't know one block ahead of time who's going to be your session nodes, because you could potentially, plan something coordinated there. And then finally, the proposer selection patch was that where currently we don't hash in the evidence for proposer selection, meaning the vote data that happens, which opens this up to a specific attack called a grinding attack, meaning that you might be able to determine who is going to be the next, or if you're the proposer, you might be able to make it more likely that you're the proposer by putting in specific transactions. Now, of course, this is a very sophisticated attack because you'd have to code in a specific mempool reader. You would also have to replay your proposal block against the state, and you would have to be the proposer, of course, all of which is quite a high barrier of entry. But just to add that little cherry of security on top, we now include voting data into the proposer selection to ensure that, even if you have somehow, the super high fast computing GPU where you're just running hashes against the state, you would not be able to know who's going to be like the last voter of the voting set, and you don't know what that vote hash is going to yield. So you would not be able to provably ensure that you are going to be the proposer, even more likely to be the proposer in the selection. So those are those security patches. Happy to take questions on those again. But like I said, I went into more detail in the previous call on those. In addition, one of the more flashy things that we're doing is we're moving away from Tendermint and Cosmos is Amino encoding, and we're using Google's protobuf encoding. Now, this is a kind of a futuristic and stabilization effort, because currently Amino, which is a wire encoding format that Cosmos basically created based off of Proto, is only implemented in Golang and has documented issues with its performance, quite heavily documented issues, in fact, that seem to contribute to a lot of the slowdown that we're seeing in terms of compute. Protobuf is, of course, maintained by Google, spread over many, many, many languages, and is basically, as efficient as they come these days in terms of wire encoding. There's always ways to shave off more nanoseconds, but in terms of popularity and adoption, Google's protobuf is usually at the top of the list. So then we also implemented a patch to delete applications after they unstake, so the state doesn't grow exponentially. Thankfully, I don't think this has even happened more than once or twice. And of course, after the patch, it will be enforced. So the state size has been relatively negligible this whole time. But that's of course an extra little patch that it was needed. Enforce max age of evidence coming through. So currently in Tendermint, the Tendermint will report double signing evidence from blocks and blocks and blocks ago. Like if you're a validator and you do a reset and you didn't submit a unstaking you didn't wait till you were jailed and you start ramping up, that will make you double sign blocks from blocks that were, ultimately from the beginning. And that can cause a lot of slashing. When we actually saw this about a year ago, when we endured the first chain halt of this network's history, we saw a lot of people getting slashed for double signs. Of course, since then, we have drastically reduced the double sign slashing itself to basically a transaction fee. And we actually haven't, given the efforts of everybody in their backup data directories and just general hygiene of the validators, we haven't really even experienced this, to my knowledge, since that event almost a year ago. And it's like I said, if you wait till you're jailed to resync the blockchain, this isn't even an issue. But this patch ensures that if a double sign evidence is older than X blocks, which is configurable by the DAO, we will not take into account that evidence in terms of slashing. because frankly, it's no longer relevant. So those are the 6.0, features that were covered in the last call. For 6.1, 2, and 3, we had some more consensus-breaking changes, which were hopefully to everyone's liking. They were, of course, voted on and proposed as well. Proposed and voted on. The first and foremost, we implemented, this isn't necessarily a consensus-breaking change, but it is a nicety. The ability to convert your evidence, your claims from amino to protobuf, which if you're after 6.x, you're already storing all your evidence in protobuf, so you don't have to even worry about that. In fact, no one on this call even has to worry about that anymore. No one participating in the network has to, but at the time it was nice for 6.1. We also implemented a custom transaction indexer, which I would love to gloat about because I think it's great, but unfortunately it was the cause of May 28th, as I mentioned prior, so I will kind of gloss over that one, even though it is, as an indexer as a whole, something that is a lot more efficient and actually returns the proper transactions when you query them, so that's good. And then finally, the flashiest of them all, we have the edit stake feature, right, which was a 6.3 add-on. So how is that going to work? Basically, there are a few different things. It's all laid out in a document that you can do to your stake without unstaking. And this is supposed to be a huge UX improvement for node runners. And this is also something that applies to the applications as well. You can edit your stake. So essentially, while you're already staked, you submit another staking transaction with some modified parameters. If you, there are a specific set of rules of things you can do, but just laid out in that document and under the Pocket Core repo, and I can share that after this call if people are interested in reading it and haven't seen it. But they're included, but not limited to upping your stake amount, upping or changing your service URL, URI, changing the chains that you're staked for, and you can also drop chains. You can, for an application, you can add new chains as well. And I know I'm missing probably one more thing, but you get the gist. You can basically edit your stake up to a certain degree of security-enabled features, right? So for me, 6.3 upgrade, when we do the change, we're going to be looking for that big UI UX or that big UX change for people in the new settlers to modify their chains that they're staked for. One important note here about that feature is that you are actually subject to the same parameters until the next session elapses, which can be up to 3 blocks, right? And the reason that this happens is because we need to make sure that your specific node who is servicing doesn't just drop off in the middle of a session, right? Like if you reduce, like you no longer support 0021, that will be something where economically you can be penalized if you drop in the middle of a session, but by the next session, of course, up to 3 blocks later, that will give you your new parameters with desired chains or desired service URL or whatever that might be. Again, all these rules are laid out in a specific document that I will share for everyone to read. It's under the specs, it's under the releases documentation, I believe. I'll get that document. But yeah, I think that's all. I'm just reading over the changelog here one more time to see if I missed anything. I believe that's it. Jack, I'll hand it back to you, or I'll take questions at this time about any specific features.
Yeah, so we have one anonymous question. Andrew, will these updates result in faster syncing for our nodes?
Okay, so faster syncing. So I mentioned that Protobuf does come with a a faster compute, meaning that anytime you read or write to a database, you're using this amino format, hence legacy codec, as you've seen in your CLI. And anytime you have transactions, same deal, right? So Protobuf will come with a slight improvement when it comes to the encoding and reading and writing, which inherently happens when you sync. Now, I'm not sure if this, whoever asked the question is actually familiar with 6.4, the beta that was actually released a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, one or 2 weeks ago. But we have actually seen anecdotally, of course, 60x syncing speeds are higher on that release due to new caching techniques implemented. So I hope that if to answer your question directly, it will have a slight increase in syncing speed with the 6.3 upgrade. But if you're really looking for a tangible, kind of almost night and day syncing speeds, you're going to want to check out the new beta and see if it fits your need or fits your expectation a little bit more. Now, of course, it's still in beta, and it's something that is an experimental release. However, it's definitely promising in the case of any resource issues that we've been having as of late, including syncing, which was something that was directly tackled by the 6.4 update. Jack, I'm not sure if they can respond to you on that platform, but that's all I have to say about that for now.
I don't believe they can, but if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask follow-ups or send follow-up questions to Slido, feel free. I'll give you a bit of time and then move on to the next topic. While we're waiting on that, I'll just give a brief update on the proposal status. The proposal has 4 yes votes and 0 no votes. We have 12 voters in the DAO currently, so we only need 2 more yes votes, and then the proposal will pass, and we'll be able to proceed with activating those features next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, I'll keep watching that, and once the proposal, or if the proposal passes, I'll update on that. So it looks like we don't have any more follow-up questions on that. Oh, actually, no. We have a question in the community calls channel. Did you ever consider snapshots regarding this syncing dilemma?
So snapshots are something, as everyone knows here, Tendermint is our base for peer-to-peer consensus and storage. They handle all block processing. Snapshots is something that's on Tendermint's roadmap, but not to get anyone too excited because it's been on their roadmap for a few years now. So we have considered it, and it's something that we might implement in the future. But again, anytime we make a fork to Tendermint and we veer away from Tendermint, like in the instance of the indexer or anything specific, it's a dangerous change. And not one that's easily undone, especially when Tendermint comes out with new upgrades. We have to port their upgrades specifically. Now, with that being said, as this becomes a greater issue, which it already obviously has been an issue, we'll have to reinvestigate their specific timeline. I believe they have an ADR out on that specific snapshot feature, but no development work, to my knowledge, has been done on the in any of their production releases, that is. Meaning that they might be, I think I've seen a couple packages of that in that vein of snapshots, and I've definitely seen some issues and some pull requests being done, but I don't believe that they're stable on their snapshot, or I know that they're not stable on their snapshots feature as of this time. So near future, it's Tendermint based, something we'd likely like to adopt. Pocket Core does require a historical knowledge of up to some amount of blocks to ensure that people aren't, removed. Like if we prune the chain at some capacity, people who have existing claims or proofs would also be pruned out there. So that's something that needs to be more thought needs to be thrown into that to ensure that we have the pruning around the max claim age max claim age parameter, and of course max jailing parameter, which, as you guys know, is right now at least a year, I believe, or 180 days maybe, for max jailed.
Okay, we've got an affirmative response there. I don't think we have any more questions on this topic. So I think I'm going to move on to the next one, which is to discuss our new chain whitelisting strategy. We have one more question just came through. Are you advising or requesting additional nodes to run or test beta 6.4, or do you have enough testers already?
That's an interesting question. And the reason why it's interesting is because it comes in the context of the 6.3 upgrade itself. Meaning that the 6.3 upgrade itself, of course, is a not zero risk event. It's our first consensus rule change, which we're actually activating. And if we have a lot of nodes on 6.4, the beta, it adds an additional risk. So meaning that until we upgrade, like currently speaking, we have a lot of nodes that have already upgraded to beta. So I'm definitely not recommending anyone downgrade at this time. If you are currently running 6.4, it's working from you. However, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily encourage others to upgrade until we have had a successful consensus rule change implemented next week. And we feel like we're pretty stable, especially if you're not enduring any hardships currently. We have a significant amount of testers at this time. We don't need any more by any means. But with that being said, I never want to shy people away from trying out the bleeding edge. Just when it comes to network health, we always like to play on the safe side and make sure that we're not advising in any way that could add more risk to an already risky event, which is the consensus rule change, of course.
Yeah. So the consensus rule change is taking place next Wednesday if the proposal passes, and then beyond that, if things are looking stable, then beta test to your heart's content, I guess. And if you are beta testing, keep in mind that there is a Pocket Arcade quest that you can claim that will contribute towards earning your vote in the DAO. So, keep that in mind and DM me if you have any questions about that. Okay, I don't believe we have any more questions on this topic, although last time I said that, another one came in last second. But I'm going to move on to our chain waitlisting strategy. I'll be presenting on this, and same applies. Any questions about it, submit it in the Discord channel or in Slido. And if anyone else on the team who's been involved in this strategy formulation has anything they want to add, just raise your hand and I'll bring you up to the stage. So new chains for Pocket, that's something we've all been very interested in for understandable reasons. And it's something we've been thinking about for a long time. We have had other ideas for strategies that we might be able to run in order to bootstrap new chains. So firstly, some context. The reason why we haven't been able to just freely add new chains as quickly as we want is there is, until now, there has been a chicken and egg problem. If a chain is too small, and there's like too few apps and nodes in the chain, in the network, there's a risk of targeted servicing where an app might decide to favor specific nodes that it gets matched to in sessions, and the pseudo-random selection algorithm will not be as strong, just statistically speaking. So we've been, until now, thinking about this in terms of saying we want to get a specific chain to a certain scale where that pseudo random selection algorithm can do its magic, and then we can be comfortable whitelisting the chain for block rewards. However, that's where the chicken and egg problem comes in, where the people are not being incentivized to support a new chain. Then who will be the first movers? Who will be the people who take on the cost of running the node and provide an altruistic service to the public good of our network by enabling a chain to be bootstrapped? So we have thought about this in the past. We've had other incentive bootstrapping ideas in the past. The first one, known as, I'm just going to post a link to the proposal, by the way, just in case anyone wants to read in depth afterwards. But the first idea we had was known as CampaignNet. The idea was that we would run isolated, incentivized testnets, like the original incentivized testnet that we ran before launching on mainnet. However, that introduced quite a large operational challenge of bootstrapping an entirely new pocket blockchain, in addition to the chains that we're serving. The other idea we had was a centrally administered funding program that would be funded by the DAO, and if we were able to measure how much work nodes are doing, the nodes that are connected to the dashboard or gateway or portal, as it will now be called in the near future, then we would be able to incentivize nodes in that manner. But none of these are really perfect. They all introduce a large operational burden. They all make it, they all are not super sustainable, because in the case of the funding program, it's taking funds away from the DAO treasury, which is limited and could be depleted over time if we are doing this for a large number of new chains. So then we had the idea that rather than trying to get the chain ID to a certain scale, where the pseudo-random selection algorithm can do its work, because pretty much every app that is currently connecting to the network does so through the dashboard, because it's super convenient for them to be able to just get an endpoint that they can swap out their Infura or Alchemy endpoint for. Why not? Instead of trying to get to a certain scale, we can actually simply control the demand side of the network. This would mean lowering the max applications parameter, and then for the dashboard, staking, filling up those slots so that the slots are generated as endpoints that developers can come along and claim, but no one else can stake directly using Pocket.js unless they coordinate with us, and we increase the max applications parameter, and they then stake. If we do this, then it doesn't matter what scale a specific chain ID is, because we know for a fact that there's no targeted servicing going on, because the demand side is all going through the dashboard. And the end result of this is that we can actually whitelist new chains as freely, as quickly, as agile as we want. Combine this with edit stake, then it becomes a much more trivially easy process. So the process that we have in mind is that we have let's say someone in the market signals demand for a specific chain, maybe Polygon, Solana, what have you. We would then give notice to the node runners that this new chain ID will be whitelisted. enough notice for that node runner to be able to spin up, for the average node runner in the community to be able to spin up a node for that chain, so that there's a level playing field by the time that the chain gets whitelisted. Once that notice period is over, and this notice period is only dependent on how long it takes to spin up a chain, because we no longer have to wait 21 days for people to unstake and restake. You can just spin up your Polygon node and then edit your stake, and you're ready. Once the notice period is over, the chain will be whitelisted, and you'll be able to start earning revenue. In order to bootstrap the number of nodes on the chain, in order to achieve like a baseline quality standard for the number of nodes that apps are being connected to, the foundation would then provide what we're referring to as minimum viable relays. We would stake our own applications and send relays to the chain to ensure that all new node runners on a chain are guaranteed to get income for that chain, while we wait on organic demand coming in, while our biz dev team does their work. So you'll be guaranteed to get revenue on new chains, and then and you'll be rewarded for being an early adopter of that chain. And then once organic demand achieves that minimum viable relay count, the sort of bootstrapping incentives that the foundation is providing would be ended, or if it takes 3 months for that organic demand to emerge, then it would be, it basically signals that there's actually not much demand for that chain, and so the bootstrapping incentives would be ended. So that basically means that the thing that we're really excited about is that it means that we can whitelist new chains as quickly as we please, which is why if this proposal passes, it's currently active and will end next Thursday, we would be whitelisting the following chains on July 5th: Avalanche Mainnet, Binance Smart Chain, and Binance Smart Chain Archival, Fuse, XDAI, Ethereum Archival, and Archival Trace. All of the Ethereum testnets, they will all be whitelisted on July 5th. And then other chains that we know people are interested in, like Polygon, Solana, etc., those will be able to be assessed and whitelisted in quite an agile fashion. We would essentially reply to the proposal thread for settlers of new chains, and in the announcements channel and Discord to inform everyone that there's a new chain being whitelisted shortly, and to get ready to start making money on that chain. In terms of some dissenting opinions that we have already anticipated, some people may feel that lowering max applications and filling those slots up with the dashboard stakes is kind of counter to the ethos of permissionless access, but we feel that it's not going to be a major concern for applications at this stage, because they all already connect through the dashboard. And this is only a temporary measure until a future protocol version introduces more native quality of service mechanisms that can basically negate the need for a process like this. And then the other concern might be that the minimum viable relays that we're providing might create unnecessary inflation. We have modeled this out. I've linked to a model in the proposal, and have calculated that if we are providing minimum viable relays for a number of chains under this process, the impact on overall inflation should be negligible. Like, we're talking for these new chains that we're planning to whitelist on July 15th or July 5th, sorry. if we provide the minimum viable relays for a period of 3 months, we're only going to see 0.19% inflation. And the people who would be least affected by this inflation are also the most engaged node runners. So that doesn't seem to be too much of a cost when considering that it will help to bootstrap the future chains for our Pocket network. So yeah, I believe I've covered everything. So just to recap on what this means in practice, just so that we're 100% clear. If the Settlers of New Chains proposal is approved, what this would mean is that the foundation would be delegated the permission to control the supported blockchains parameter, which determines which blockchains are earning block reward, and the max applications parameter, which determines how many applications are allowed to stake in the network at any given time. The foundation would then use this permission to control the pipeline of new chains that are being whitelisted, to give fair notice to all node runners, to spin up nodes before we whitelist chains. And then when whitelisting chains, we would provide minimum viable relays to help bootstrap the number of nodes that we have, and to also to test the quality of service of those nodes before we start to expose endpoints to app developers through the dashboard. And we would start this process by whitelisting about 11 new chains: Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, Fuse, XDAI, Ethereum, basically all of the Ethereum chains that are not yet whitelisted. And we'd give you all notice when that happens. So I think I've covered everything, but if anyone else on the team who made that proposal wants to add anything, just raise your hand and I'll bring you up. Just checking Slido to see if there's any questions there. I can say that, so we had a poll to ask which chain you all were most excited about. Just to be clear, this poll is not determining which chains we're prioritizing. The majority of these chains, as I said, will be whitelisted July 5th. The only chains in this list that are not going to be whitelisted July 5th as of now are Polygon and Solana. But I can say that those are on our radar, and one or two of them may be whitelisted quite shortly after the July 5th date. But so the poll was answered by 9 people, and in order, the chains we're most excited about, it just changed. The poll was answered by 10 people, and in order, the chains we're most excited about are number 1, XDAI, number 2, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, Solana, Ethereum Archival, Fuse, Avalanche, Ethereum Testnets, and then other. So that's some interesting results there. We have no questions in Slido. We have no questions in community call. So unless anyone raises their hand, I think I may pass it on to Shane to talk about Node Pilot. Okay. Oh, Mike's coming up.
I was just going to say, Arnaud has a couple of questions there that I think are.
Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. I was looking for new questions. I forgot that these ones had been put in originally before the call. These might be questions that I may have to bring Alex up to discuss. So I can answer the first question. So can we have the realistic expected volumes on each chains to have that information taken into account on our analysis and voting? I assume this was in response to the poll itself. The voting on the poll is not really impacting anything. I just thought it would be fun to see what chains people are excited about. In terms of the expected volume for each chain, Yeah, maybe Shane, do you want to touch on expected volume?
Yeah. In terms of expected volume, one of the main reasons we're kind of going with some of these chains, as in Avalanche, Fuse, and Binance Smart Chain, is we are talking with a lot of these foundations as well, and we're really excited to be more a part of their ecosystem. So we have a number of applications, like for Binance Smart Chain, that have requested Binance Smart Chain endpoints. A lot of them are on Ethereum, and then they would like Binance Smart Chain endpoints. And so it's been one of those things where we haven't been able to provide those endpoints with kind of production level quality. With all these new advancements we now have, we can now start offering those endpoints with the kind of quality that applications expect, and the kind of quality we want to be known on the Pocket Network with. So anyways, in terms of the actual specifics, I can't give right now exactly what those are, but the exciting part is with a lot of these chains, we're talking directly with the foundations themselves, and we're building relationships, and they're excited about what we can bring to their different ecosystems. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, and kind of getting to that production ready. Get each of these networks to production ready for the endpoints. And now that we have the portal ready to go, and applications are creating endpoints through the portal, man, we're really in a good spot to really connect with these different ecosystems in a way that is also great on the user experience side. So
yeah, so we can't provide accurate estimates of the expected volume for a chain, but we do know that they have large ecosystems, and we have ways in to provide an alternative infrastructure for the applications in those ecosystems. So we know the volume will be larger. How much larger? That really depends on biz dev and marketing and so on. One thing I'd like to add. The one thing that we have noticed and would like to, a behavior we've noticed and would like to discourage since Edit Stake is on the horizon next week, is pre-staking for a specific chain without actually connecting to the node for that chain. So pre-staking on XDAI when you don't have an XDAI node spun up yet. This is not great behavior, because it does mean that when we are providing endpoints through the dashboard to applications, the protocol will still be connecting you to those applications, and your node is basically down, non-existent, and so you're negatively impacting the quality of service for those applications. So now that Edit Stake is coming, you will no longer need to pre-stake for a chain, because it's no longer a concern that you will have to wait 21 days if you want to add a chain. So yeah, we would like to discourage people from or encourage people to change that behavior and only add a chain to their stake if they have spun up the node for that chain, just to maximize the quality of service that the network provides and ensure that we get as much retention and satisfaction from applications as possible. So we have some other questions about specific chains that I wondered if Alex might be interested in coming up to talk a bit about. Mr. Natural Nodes, I'll invite you to speak. Yeah, I've sent you an invite. I think you need to accept the invite. There we go. So we have two questions. The first one is, do any other node providers have experience with any of those protocols and with running them as full nodes? I guess that's just looking to get some comments on how the experience will be running these nodes compared to running Ethereum nodes, which is the main chain we've been using so far. And then the other one is specific to Solana. Very bullish for Solana, but there are latency constraints. Will the performance of Solana be sufficient?
Sure. So to the first question, do we have experience running these nodes? Yeah, absolutely. So at the foundation, we have to bring up fallbacks, what we call backups, to the service of each chain. So to do that before, when we first start talking with BizDev, they say, explore Binance Smart Chain. I see what it takes to bring up a node, and we work with it from there. So yes, we definitely have experience with all of these chains, and I'm perfectly willing and able to help get all of them working with you. So if you have questions for me specifically about how to run a chain, hit me up in the Node Runner channel about the specific chain you're asking. I also have a Docker Compose file that runs literally all of these new chains. So if you run under Docker, I have some Compose examples that can bring up all of these chains on one box, actually. So if you want to spin up a big box and get all these new chains running, I have that for you. To be honest, the experience running some of these new chains has been very bad, but honestly, in the recent times, it's gotten actually a lot better. Binance Smart Chain recently released a beta version that's based on a newer Geth. It not only shrunk the database size significantly to where their archival node is now just a bit bigger than the old full node, but it also is much more stable. It used to crash without exiting. It used to stop syncing without exiting, so you couldn't even check the process. It was pretty bad. They're a lot more stable these days. I have a lot of confidence in pretty much all of these chains that I've agreed to be whitelisted here. So yeah, happy to help you run them. Happy to help discuss, node requirements or resource requirements. And speaking of resource requirements, something that Jack didn't touch on about running these nodes is that we're switching all of our Ethereum nodes to Aragon. Aragon used to be known as TurboGeth. It's now taking over where Open Ethereum was. So Gnosis and all the people that were backing Open Ethereum are abandoning it. It's going to be deprecated, and they're all moving over to what was TurboGeth. It's now called Aragon, which is, of course, a horrible name if you're used to Aragon, the AR. Aragon, the node, is ERI, Aragon, ERIGON. The resource requirements are so much lower. So an archival node on Parity or Open Ethereum was over 8 terabytes. Same with Geth. They both had the same space requirements. Aragon is 1.3 terabytes, and that includes all the archival states, all the archival trees, all the everything, all the way back. Very, very impressive stuff. Very easy to get going. It also separates the RPC from the data layer, making separation and concerns a lot easier. It's pretty easy to scale. Really happy. I also have been running some speed tests on it, and it is faster than Open Ethereum, given the same resources. So real happy with Aragon. The other question was about Solana. We have not spun that up locally yet. Of course, it is a giant node. It's bigger than Ethereum Archival. They say to give it something like 32 or 64 cores, something outrageous. It is very resource intensive, and yes, the relays will have to be significant to make up for the cost of the node. There's also another proposal that I think I'll be pushing soon to the DAO, and that's to increase the relay amount per chain. So to make the relay reward variable per chain, so that these more expensive nodes like Solana are better compensated. It's not the same running a Solana node as an XDAI node. But yet they pay out the same per relay. So that's something we'll be looking at in the future, definitely as we start bringing these more resource-intensive chains online, like Solana. One other thing I wanted to note about Aragon and Solana, these are both nodes that I'm going to be running bare metal outside of Docker. They both have issues where they want to be more directly on the instance itself. So I'll be avoiding Docker with those two. But that's about it. Do we have a question? Raise hand.
Yeah, we do. Corin, I'll bring you up, invite you to the stage. You're now on the stage.
Yeah, sorry, I was still muted. I wanted to pick up on the TurboGet Aragon thing. I've been following them for a year, and I have to agree they've been doing quite impressive stuff. And their resource requirement is significantly lower. But to my experience in following them quite closely, they're not production ready. Their data results different between two subsequent versions still. If I'm now hearing that POCT will be switching over to those and recommending those for production, I'm a bit concerned. To their credit, they're pushing out fixes and patches and everything that they can on a very fast pace. But there are data differences compared to Open Ethereum and compared to the versions between themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I've started following them more closely now too, and I am still running our Open Ethereum nodes as we're still going through testing. So yeah, I probably shouldn't have given it 100% seal of approval, but I am very happy with the results so far. I'm definitely aware of the minor differences that they are seeing in some results returned. But as I'm sure you know, Alexi is very much on top of those and gets on those as quickly as possible. The production readiness, I looked into that, and basically his argument that it's not production ready is that there may be breaking database changes in between versions. Like he's not ready to guarantee that you won't have to resync. That's a caveat I'm okay with. The minor data differences, I would have to do a bit more research to see if there's actually anything remaining. Like there were some trace things that were remaining that were different from OE, but I saw he was addressing them like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, if you know of any major data differences that we definitely should be aware of, please let me know.
Do you have any? Oh,
I keep following them quite closely because one of my main reasons to use Ethereum Archive is for the graph, and there the data consistency is really important. So yeah, I find it a very tricky thing to do or to say right now. But yes, I totally agree that the moment they are aware of an issue, they're all hands on deck to fix it. But the differences between them I'm not sure how significant they are. But yeah, there are places to follow and to track those or to investigate them yourself.
I think part of the issue too is that when I started bringing up the foundation nodes, I was switching from Geth to Open Ethereum, and syncing an archival node it took over 6 to 8 weeks, and it wasn't even done. And this was giving it just massive amounts of resources. So without starting from a backup, it's nearly impossible to sync a parity in Open Ethereum archival node at this point. So it was kind of only actually a choice out of necessity, or stick with Geth.
Yeah, I synced mine in like 3 weeks, but that was last summer. So
yeah, yeah, quite a bit.
7.5. So
yeah, quite a bit bigger now. Yeah, thanks for the questions. I definitely agree. I think also that we don't have archival or trace service now, so that bringing this up in a sort of an experimental state to where we can work this out as he works through the issues, I think is a good move. Just because this makes it actually possible for people to run archival, because it was really not maintainable in the state that where it was going.
awesome. Yeah, I think maybe we can keep this conversation going async as well. Thanks for raising those concerns, Gordon. If there's any other questions, make them known now. Raise your hand or quickly submit it, and then I will hand it over to Shane to talk about NodePilot. Okay.
All right, cool.
Do you want to screen share? We could move to the cafe channel.
Yeah, if we wanted to go to the cafe, we have like a 6-minute video that goes over arguably our most exciting open source library we're coming out with that anyone can use for node running. So I think it'd be great if we just go to the cafe and then we can just share the video and then discuss any questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, see you in the cafe.
See you there.
All right. We'll let everyone come over. All right. Let me know. Can people see the text? Clear enough? If everyone's clicked on the.
Could zoom in a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to start it. I'm also going to go ahead and post the link to this video. That will actually make it easy as well. Then, if anyone gets lost, they could actually just click over to the video, and then we can reconvene after. Okay, so in the community chat. All right, I'm going to start the video here. Ready?
Hey
Let's
friends,
go.
this is our Node Runner library. Shane wanted me to quickly give a little demo, show you guys what it is. We're going to have it live within minutes. So the idea is you have Docker Compose and you have Monk and you have all these other things which are about orchestration. You write your script and then you run your nodes or whatever. What we're trying to provide, or what we want to provide with this, is programmatic access. So you can just write your code and run your nodes, okay? This is written in TypeScript, so everything's type safe, and yeah. So in our case, I'm going to quickly show you Bitcoin right here. We're going to be we have Bitcoin, we're adding Ethereum and Pocket and everything else, plus how to fit them all together. This is what we are implementing this open source library into NodePilot as the driver. Currently, this is hard coded in, but we're moving away from that. So, bring the community in. So here we go. This is Bitcoin. Everything you need to run a Bitcoin node is completely encapsulated inside of here. You have your versions. It tells you what, Docker image to run for it. You have the different clients you can run, your different node types. In this case, we don't have archival. It's just full testnet, mainnet. You have your configs, all right? And then at this point, we have, two little methods right now. Start and stop. Not a big deal. Oh, toObject. So let's quickly just show you how this works. Say that you want to run a Bitcoin node, all right? Let's go ahead and do that. We will do here, Bitcoin equals new Bitcoin. There we go. We're not passing any custom things yet. We do that, we'll have a Bitcoin node. So then, let's go ahead and just grab our config, okay? So we will log that, bitcoin.generate config. There we go. So it created us a Bitcoin node and it generated our config. So if we wanted to save that, we could do that and then link to that. Either way, let's go ahead and add a little customization here. Let's change the network to testnet. Okay, we'll do testnet. And let's go ahead and give it a name for when we actually start the node running. Okay, in this case, we use an ID. So I will call it my Bitcoin node. There we go. Now let's go ahead and start my Bitcoin node. We'll do bitcoin.start. Then for any output, I want to for now, I'll just log it to the console. For any errors, we'll do console error. Okay. And then let's go ahead and automatically have it close. So we'll do a set timeout here. Closed up. We'll do bitcoin.stop. And we'll do that after, let's go 10 seconds. Okay. Make that 15. So let's go ahead and run our thing again. Guess what? You now have a Bitcoin node run. We can go ahead and run over here, do Docker PS. Here's our Bitcoin node. Here's our ports. Here's our names. My Bitcoin node. You could do anything you want to with regular Docker. In this case, after 15 seconds, it's stopping it. You can see the stop process is already started. There you go. Shut down, done. And then if you want to go ahead and save your config to run it next time, That's very easy. Let's just go get rid of that. Excuse me, I'm in Mac, not in Linux. Use that command button. So const data Bitcoin dot to object, and then just stick that. Just so you can see it. So here's all you do. You save that data, and then you your database or JSON file, whatever you want. And then next time you run it, you just pass that into here. That's all the data that changes. What here? You could set your data directory. Oh, go ahead and show you that over here. You can set your data directory, your wallet directory, the path to your config file, anything. You can give it a Docker network. In this case, we have a default Docker network that it runs on, so all your nodes are already inside of their own network. You can set how many CPUs, how much memory. And we're adding methods for getting your, the version, getting the block count, all that fun stuff. So, like I said, you guys will be able to start playing with it pretty much at the time Shane shows this. So,
in quick recap, so this is all being run in Docker. So it's a library. You just, once you have it installed,
all you need is Docker installed. If
all
you
you
have
need is
Docker installed, you can run it.
And so you just
Just
pass
start a node programmatically.
you just pass a command and it deploys a node for you. And the great thing is you can create your own configs. We will be creating our own configs for NodePilot, and anyone can create their own, configs to feed into this deployment. So it's very different than a orchestration, because this is where you actually do the deployments of the nodes here, and then you can build whatever kind of orchestration you want kind of on top of it. But
exactly, you could build NodePilot on top of it, or if you just wanted to build a crypto shopping cart on your multi-currency shopping cart on your website, you could do that. Though obviously it'd be better to use Pocket itself, but still.
Yeah, exactly. But regardless,
could do anything.
It just makes deployment easy, and this will allow us to do updates really easy, because again, everything within NodePilot, if it needs to deploy a new node or update a node, it's just going to pull config files, which ultimately will just be a few lines of code to pull that file and deploy that new node. So you don't have to shut down your whole orchestration. You don't have to, your whole NodePilot doesn't have to go down before you update a node or something of that nature. Everything is handled on a very individual level, and each command goes directly to the blockchain you deployed. So node per node deployment. So that's it. Thanks, guys. Cool. So hopefully pretty straightforward. You can also go back and look at that video. We did link it in the community call, and I'll edit it so people know that it's for the video. Anyways, we're really excited about this. This will open the door to us being able to update and deploy nodes super easy through NodePilot. And because it's a library, anyone could use it within their own node systems. And so if Pocket wanted to maintain their own configs for this kind of thing, it would be then super easy for any node runner to then just update a node, not have to go through a hassle of dealing with like a full compose file in order to do this. Anyways, we're really excited about it. That's pretty much it. We have a number of other little features and things of that. We've done some cool things with backups, and but our main thing is going to be this updating, and hopefully it'll actually be usable for the rest of the community. There isn't any kind of library like this. There's orchestration tools, but there's not like deployment libraries like this. So this is actually the first of its kind. So we're excited about that, and we hope that even potentially people outside of Pocket get interested in contributing to something like this. So it can really benefit any project that has nodes. They can create a file super quick, and then making a GUI to then launch that launch that node is completely up to them. And we could also kind of do it within Node Pilot, which then connects people to Pocket as well. So overall, we're really excited about it.
Any questions for Shane? None have come in through Slido, so.
Sounds good. We Ryan did post in the community call the GitHub, so anyone could download and start using it. I believe we only have it for Bitcoin right now. We just use that as our first use case, but we'll be coming out with all these other ones, especially the ones that we mentioned today. We're one to add service for. We'll be adding those to this library as well, which then opens the door for other people to use it. And create their own configs with it, and then it also will just pipe directly into Node Pilot. So no longer will chains be hard-coded into the Node Pilot application. It's all going to be handled through this open source library that anyone can see, and that opens up the door for people really trusting, because they can actually see all the configs. Nothing is hard-coded into the executable, which is Node Pilot. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Shane. So yeah, that's all the topics for the community call. So I think we're able to wrap things up. Remember to claim your Pulp NFT. Message the Pulp bot with the secret code SETTLERS, SETTLERS. The next community call will be a month from now, roughly. It will be once this call ends, or around about 2 p.m. The next. Oh, actually, no. The event has been created now. So yeah, the agenda description on the event will be updated. But you can all head into the calendar channel and just click the green check mark to RSVP, so that you'll be notified for the next community call, which is July 25th. July 23rd. I will edit the agenda with the topics for the next time. If any of you have any topics that you want to suggest to talk about, it could be something that you present, or it could be something that you would like just to have a general discussion on, then just DM me with that, and I can add that to the agenda for next time. Thanks, everyone.